no one could actually believe it. I mean, just the differences in the victimology and the years in between. Nobody predicted that these three cases would be linked.
Welcome back to Closer Look. It's Monday, the second day of March. We made it. The calendar has flipped. We're that much closer to spring. And as they say, March in like a lion, out like a lamb.
Who's the lion?
It does not matter.
You're the lamb.
I've been called a lot of things. Add that to the list. As long as it means that we're getting that much closer to nicer weather, snow melting, I'm good with it.
Opening day.
Oh,
Opening day's in 25 days. March, it's early. March 27th.
You're talking baseball. I was thinking, when does the golf course open again?
Opening day, March 27th, Major Leagues.
Yes, and an exciting guest that we won't reveal yet.
Yes, that's right.
But it's coming. Speaking of exciting guests, Friday, if you missed the show, Matthew Holmes joined us from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And what a great discussion about tariffs and everything that is going on and how it's impacting our economy.
It was a great conversation. It's one of my favorite ones we've had in a long time. And it's easy to miss the show sometimes on a Friday. You're getting into the weekend. It drops at 7 p.m. So maybe you didn't watch Closer Look on a Friday night. But I would definitely check this out. Just a great conversation about where we are a year after the trade war started, what lessons we've learned as Canadians, and where our economy needs to go from here, and sort of what's working, what's not, and what we can expect as we move forward with CUSMA renegotiations as well. All kinds of uncertainties out there, and Matthew's a great guy because he's kind of been one of the public faces of explaining this to Canadians over last year. He's been on countless newscasts, as he joked. I think he joked with his mother-in-law. Yeah. It was a great conversation, and I think there's a lot more to take out of it. So if you missed it, I would definitely check that out.
And here's a tip. If you did miss it, here's how you don't miss them. Go to closerlookpodcast.ca, put your email in. We will send you every episode so that you do not, in fact, miss an episode.
And on Saturday, you get the Rewind email, which is my favorite email of the week.
Get all 5 of them.
Of all my emails I get all week, that Saturday morning email is the best one. Because then I go back and say, did we have 5 good shows this week?
We did.
I think, Tuesday was all right. Wednesday was pretty good. I make sure I can judge if we had a good week or not. It was a good week.
You'll read that email, but none for me. Okay, to today's show, it seems not a day goes by that you don't read a headline somewhere that talks about a cold case being solved with new DNA technology.
It does feel that way. There's been a lot of it lately, and a lot of it is that new technology, that investigative genetic genealogy that we talked about. Remember a few months ago, they uncovered a serial killer in Toronto named Kenneth Smith.
Yes.
And these were cold cases from decades earlier. 3 women who were killed that the police didn't even know at the time were connected. Yeah. They were years apart in different parts of the GTA. And it took this new technique, this new genetic genealogy technique to uncover them. I'm not a DNA expert, but essentially they use old school genetic DNA technology with genealogy, like family trees.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
So they will use more up-to-date technology to find partial matches that could be. So when they go into a publicly available database, like there's not Ancestry.ca, but there's like Family Tree DNA, GED match that they can find. Okay, maybe they'll say, okay, there's some aspects of this person's DNA that matches this person who's a third cousin, and they go and build a family tree based on that, and it could take a long time.
Yeah,
but they use that technique to get Kenneth Smith. Okay. And it was actually first used to get the infamous Golden State Killer back in 2018 or 2019.
Exactly.
And since then, there's been hundreds of cases solved using this, including the Kenneth Smith case. And just, like you said off the top, there's been a lot of headlines almost every other day. It feels like another case around the world being solved with this technology. Just for example, over the last week or so, there were skeletal remains found in a wooded area near Florida that for nearly 50 years, they had no idea who they were. Wow. And they finally revealed who the lady was, who these remains belonged to. More than 4 decades after a teenager was murdered in California, this same technique unearthed the killer using DNA found on a discarded cigarette near the scene. So you're talking 4 decades later, right? Same thing happened in Arkansas this week, where a Jane Doe from 1994, so that's 32 years ago, was finally identified. So this has given new life to cold cases in a way that was unimaginable a decade ago. And it's also, there's some controversy. Just so everyone know, we're going to speak to the Toronto Police detective who was in charge of the unit that led the Kenneth Smith investigation. And he's been involved in a lot of other cases. And he talked as well about how Ancestry.ca, which is the biggest kind of the largest of these family tree databases, doesn't allow blanket access to police. They have to get a warrant to use it. And it's kind of slowed down some of their investigations as well. And they're trying to talk to them about opening that up and allowing it to be used more. But I thought it was a great opportunity for us to go back and listen to that interview because it's a fascinating blow by blow of how these investigations unfold and sort of how they come together and why they're being used so much more by police.
Detective Sergeant Smith, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I think the best way for people to fully understand how all of this came together is to go in chronological order. So can we start from the beginning? Can you tell us about these three women and what happened to them all these years ago?
Absolutely. So in 1981, Christine Prince was a nanny from Wales. She came over here to work with a family in the downtown area. She was out with a few friends in the evening and was walking home to the home where she looked after the children, and she never made it that night. So we know that she had made it as far as the street. So she was walking up her street, and at that point she was intercepted and abducted. And the next thing that we knew, unfortunately, her body was found up by the Rouge River by the Toronto Zoo, way far away from where she was actually abducted. And she had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and the cause of death was actually drowning from her being thrown into the river. So unfortunately, that was the first event. The second event was in 1982, and Claire Sampson was out with friends on the street around Jarvis and Gerrard. She was picked up by a male in a vehicle, unknown, what their relationship was. We don't believe there was a relationship there, but she may have been looking for a ride to go somewhere at the time. And the next day, unfortunately, Claire's body's found up in Oro Medonte Township. And she's shot this time, and she's sexually assaulted as well and deceased. So that's two in a row, but obviously there was nothing to link those cases as they're very different. And then we have a huge break in between. I mean, almost 15 years. And we're into 1997. Gracelyn Greenidge is a nursing assistant. She worked till like 11 o'clock that night, drove home to her address up in the northern part of Toronto. And the last conversation anyone had with her was about midnight. Somebody had let her know that she had left her lights on in her vehicle. She went down, shut them off, came back up to her apartment. She had obviously gotten ready for bed. She was in her nightie, and we believe that the offender was able to gain access to her apartment somehow, and there was a terrible fight that ensued, and he ended up suffocating and stabbing Gracelyn to death.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so obviously technology has changed and evolved over time. What kind of DNA were you able to collect at that time?
So we were able to collect DNA from all three scenes. And over the course of the years, in 2016, we were finally able to link both the Prince DNA with the Sampson DNA. And in 2017, with resubmission of property from Gracelyn Greenidge's apartment, we were able to determine that all three cases were linked through DNA.
Can we walk that back a little bit, Detective Sergeant? So in 2016, the DNA database was able to find the link between the two of the women, right? So that's a big moment in the case. And then the third woman is linked a year later. At that moment, I don't want to pretend to know how this works, but that's a big moment after so many years, right? I assume when the officers working on this case are like, man, that's a huge break.
No one could actually believe it. I mean, just the differences in the victimology and the years in between. Nobody predicted that these three cases would be linked. So when they were actually linked, we had to do a bunch of quality checks just to make sure that, the results were actually legitimate. it was very surprising to us. But at that point, we knew, we're dealing with a serial killer.
So essentially, at that point, these three women all killed by the same person, right? That's your mystery.
Correct. Yeah, all three killed by the same person.
And at that point, Detective Sergeant, would you reach out to the relatives at that point and say, hey, we've made a bit of a break in the case, or do you kind of keep that close to your chest as the investigation unfolds?
For the most part, we keep it close to our chest, and it's more because we don't want to give the families false hope. I mean, even though we knew that these three were connected, we don't want the families to think that we're, imminently solving these cases and to be waiting on that call for the solve. So we keep them updated to the best that we can, but we don't want to give them too much of the investigative file just because, like I said, sometimes it creates false hope, and that's not fair to the families.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it earlier, too. Just these three crimes were all very different, like the way these women were killed. That, like you mentioned, that's very surprising, I assume, at the time when you realize they're connected.
Yeah, doing this job over the past few years and with the advances of science, we've really gone against a lot of the notions in policing, things like, you can follow victimology, those sort of things, because everyone was different. Every murder type was different. Like, there was nothing to ever say that there was anything that could have linked these three cases together.
Mm-hmm. Another big step for the investigation was in 2022. You hired this U.S. company called Othram, or you work with them, and they specialize in this technique, this forensic genetic technique that we're going to talk some more about. What did that company do for you? How do they work?
So basically, when we take DNA from a crime scene, we put it in what's called an STR format, or a short tandem repeat format. That's the best evidence for court. So that's basically your one-to-one matching. It's your 22 chromosomes. It shows everything that it shows everybody has their own unique STR profile. So once you have it, you have to find that one person in the world that matches up to that profile. So basically, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. And what we did with Othram was we sequenced the DNA in a different way, which is called a SNP format, or a single nucleotide polymorphism.
Oh, yeah.
And that's basically all your genes between your genes. So you can get up to 1 million SNPs, but it shows, hair color, eye color, skin color, the root population of where your family was, years and years ago. But it allows us to also use familial matching. So we can use those SNPs to say how related we are to anybody else in the world. So it allows us to actually build a family tree and lead us towards the offender.
Detective Sergeant, most of our listeners and viewers obviously are not forensic experts. Can you explain investigative genetic genealogy? How does it work?
Absolutely. So it was basically just how I explained it to you. So we take DNA and we sequence it in a different way. So we take it from, what makes you different from everybody else in the world to what makes you the same as everybody else in the world. Once we have that, we upload it to two databases that allow police involvement. One is GEDmatch and one is Family Tree DNA. From there, they send us what's called a match list. It's basically, it's in terms of centimorgans. So that's how genetically related you are to anybody else in the world. So the only DNA that we have access to is our offenders. But what we receive is a centimorgan match of anybody that's uploaded to those systems that allow police involvement. And we are able to build out family trees. We have to build back in time to find most recent common ancestors. And then once we build back to that, then we build towards our offender to show how those families, through the birth of children, are related to each other. It's better if we have matches on the familial side, or the paternal side and the maternal side. That really helps us out. But we work with whatever we have. Basically, anything over 50 centimorgans is useful to us.
That's fascinating.
I was just going to say, it's unbelievable. And are you literally working from public databases? People, would they voluntarily put their DNA in these databases?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like I said, the only two databases that we can work with are GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. So there's a few million profiles, or 1.8 million, maybe 1.5 million profiles on these databases. If we had access to something like Ancestry.com or whatever, there's 30 million profiles on there. We could literally solve every cold case in the world, but we don't have any access to those profiles.
I want to ask you about that, but we'll do that later. Let's finish this train of thought we're at. I appreciate that. So at some point, Would this take months and months? Like, how long does it take to put together a family tree?
It's really dependent on how many matches we actually have. I mean, it could take you 5 minutes. It could take you 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And certain ethnicities aren't as predominant on the websites. If you have Northern European in your offender, you've got a great likelihood of solving it fairly fast. If you have some sort of other ethnicities that don't upload to these databases, it could take a lot longer to solve the case.
So was there a moment where someone slid something across your desk or sent you an email that said, this is who we think this person is?
The unusual thing about this, and we are honestly never this lucky, but once we were able to deconvolute the mixture and we were able to upload it to the database, we had a lot of close relative matches. And I mean, close relative for us is like, second cousin, first cousin, those sort of things. But that narrows us in very quickly. So once we were actually able to upload it, we were very quickly able to identify a family of offender.
That's amazing. So at some point, do you literally have to ask a judge for permission to exhume a body to get DNA evidence? How did you get this gentleman's DNA?
So when we solved the Christine Jessup case, they actually changed the Coroner's Act. So any autopsies in Ontario now, and I believe Alberta is the same. I'm not sure if there's any other provinces in Canada, but they actually keep what's called a paraffin block from every autopsy that's performed. So, and that's not necessarily just for our sort of testing, but we can access that with a warrant, but it's for future, testing of diseases or see if people were, had these diseases years ago. But they are keeping these paraffin blocks. So we were able to actually write a warrant, obtain the paraffin block from his autopsy and test it against the DNA that we had from the scene.
Amazing.
Now, on December 3rd, you conclusively identified Kenneth Smith as the killer. Can you even begin to describe that moment, finally discovering the truth after all that time had passed?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the cases that we were fixated on. I know both the OPP and our investigators, they wanted nothing more than to solve this case just because it was so unique, and it was 3 vulnerable women minding their own business, and all 3 were taken, sexually assaulted, murdered viciously. So when we were able to actually say 100% that Kenneth Smith was our offender, it was unbelievable for our investigators. That everybody was just so happy.
And then the phone calls to the family. What was the reaction?
Yeah, I mean, the families were great, and they were great throughout all of this. I mean, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have a family member murdered and have it be 20, 30, 40 years later and still no answers. So they were great about it. I mean, they were just thrilled that they could finally find out who actually did this. I mean, you have to think when you have a family member murdered, imagine the suspicion that goes around. Was it their boyfriend? Was it a friend? Was it somebody in our family? Was it, right? Like you don't know who you can trust. You don't know if you're standing beside the offender at any time. So even though we can't give them the why it happened, but we can give them the person that committed this, and it takes suspicion off everybody else that over the 40 years they may have, thought could have committed these acts.
That's a great point. It does throw away the suspicion on people you may have thought were involved. That's a great point. Thank you for that. Is it a little bit bittersweet? I mean, we know that this person had passed away 6 years earlier. You're literally 6 years late in catching. Not that it's anyone's fault. That's how long this kind of takes. But did that bother you a little bit, finding out he had passed? He was already gone?
Yeah, I mean, we would always like these people to have to face justice, right? To stand up there and either admit their guilt or to try to, say why this was not them. And we could present our case, and they would have to actually be sentenced for their crimes. I mean, that's the ultimate goal in this, and it is unfortunate. But at least in the end, we're able to identify them regardless of whether we were able to try them or not.
Have you heard from other officers who worked the cases back in the day? They must be satisfied.
Yeah, many. I mean, you don't really think about it, but officers that retire from especially the homicide squad, each one of them has 1 or 2 cases that still burns them in retirement, where they sit there and they just think, like, I can't believe we couldn't have solved that case, or I wanted to solve that case so badly. So these advances in technology have brought these cases where we can solve them. And the investigators that lived through this and worked this at the time are just thrilled that we're able to actually bring this to conclusion now. They wish they had been able to do it 30, 40 years ago.
I assume some relief for these people too, right? Because they'd be so obsessed with catching these killers, and they now know that there was nothing they could have done. I mean, this is just, it's a total mystery.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it would be a lot harder if it was someone sitting right under everyone's noses. But I mean, I think you've seen from the cases that we've solved, again, it goes against the normal theory that people know they're killers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these have just been really random events. Like there's been no connection. There's no way that you could have ever found this offender and connected them to these murders. It's just, it's impossible without DNA.
No, we know you're busy. We just have a few more questions. But I would keep you on for another hour, Detective Sergeant. It's a fascinating topic, and we're going to talk about some other things. But have you given any thought to what you think was going through Kenneth Smith's mind in his final days on Earth? I mean, he lived with these crimes. Have you given thought to that?
Yeah, I mean, we debate that in our office all the time, what these people are thinking. Like, are they sitting there? Are they able to sleep at night? I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, but have they just put this out of their mind, like it never actually happened to them? Or, are they thinking about it every time they go to bed? Do they live this every day, or have they just put this completely out of their mind? I mean, in this case, I think this person, he had done it so many times. I think I don't know if it would have really bothered him. I mean, I think he may have enjoyed what he was doing, which is, I mean, sadistic to say, but, in the end, I just wish we knew what he was thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding. Let me ask you this. What have you learned about the killer? We know that he was born in South Porcupine, was living in Toronto at the time of the three murders. What else were you able to gather?
Yeah, I mean, he moved around a lot. He lived numerous places in Toronto, I think 16 or 17 different addresses, wow, ranging from North and South Scarborough to Northern Etobicoke, Southern Etobicoke, High Park, a number of places downtown, Mississauga, Peel region, York region. I mean, he was all over the place. We know that he worked odd jobs. He had worked for a security company at one point as an office worker. He'd been a salesman for a couple of different furniture places. So he did work at times. He lived in a lot of different places. We've spoken to coworkers, people that knew him over the years. Nobody really suspected him of any of this. They thought he was an odd person, but nobody really even thought of this, that this would have been going on.
Yeah. We also know that he was also convicted before these murders of a pretty brutal crime in Barrie in 1975, the rape and kidnapping of a 14-year-old girl. Were there other convictions along the way, either before or after these murders?
So, yeah, there was so before the murders, there was that conviction for sexual offenses. There were some other sexual offenses as a youth. And then there was more convictions similar in nature between the murders, where he went back to jail for a few different terms. But a lot of the sexually based offenses were withdrawn. So he was convicted of more weapons charges and stuff, but it was all very similar MO in regards to his offenses.
Here's the big question. I'm sure you've been asked this 50 times already, but there's a huge gap between that second murder in 1983 and the third one in 1997. Do you suspect that there are more victims here?
There's a good possibility that there are more victims, yes. Now, I mean, he did spend a long portion of that in custody, so we can account for those years, but whether it's sexual assault victims and or murder victims, we're not really sure. It's when you look at his offenses, it's kind of bizarre how some of the women ended up deceased and others were kind of let go once they've been sexually assaulted. So we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to kind of put together a pattern and figure out some of the whys that, unfortunately, because we can't talk to them, are a little tougher to put together.
Which is why you're obviously asking people who knew him to come forward and talk to you.
That's right. And any little tidbit, I mean, may help us figure out what was going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
How many cold cases are sitting on your desk right now, and how game-changing could this technology be for you and your team?
Well, I mean, right now we have about 804 cold cases. That's just homicides to tack on.
In Toronto, Detective Sergeant? Just in Toronto?
Just in Toronto, yeah.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Tack on unidentified human remains and cold case sex crimes, and we're, well into the thousands. But right now we have solved about 68 using this technology. We've put forward probably around 130 cases. We're looking at putting 28 to 36 more up this year. I mean, we've been lucky enough to have the support of the Ontario government. The Solicitor General's office has provided us with a grant to look after IgG testing for the entire province of Ontario. So it's a great, it's great to have that money and that grant money. It's allowed us to hire genealogists. It's allowed us to pay for testing. And we've proven that this works. Like, we're at close to a 50% success rate right now, which is, that before this came along, we were solving maybe one case every 5 years. So it's a huge game changer for all these old cases, and we can relook at them. And anything with DNA, we have the ability to solve.
All right. Before you go, speaking of game changer, you mentioned Ancestry.ca. Are there rules that you're not allowed to access their data? And are you in discussions with them? What's happened there?
Yeah, so they're enforcing their terms of service, which means they have banned police from using anything on their system, which we never had access to their DNA or their DNA profiles anyway, so there was no risk of privacy. We are trying to have conversations with them. I know some of the groups we're involved with have reached out to them. I've reached out to them personally. I haven't heard back, unfortunately, but I'd just like to have a discussion. In reality, all we want is their research. I mean, that is what is big to us. And it's really open source research. It's just that Ancestry provides us like a Google search for genealogy. Mm-hmm. We can still do it. It's just we have to go to every open source on our own. So it's very time consuming, whereas Ancestry could save us a bunch of time, and we could solve a lot more cases just by using their research. We have no interest in getting into their DNA or their DNA profiles. I mean, obviously it would be great, but that isn't allowed. And, the people haven't consented to us using their DNA. So we would never ask for that. But all we really want to use is their research.
All right, there's Detective Sergeant Steve Smith, who heads up the Cold Case Squad at Toronto Police Services. Detective Sergeant, well done to you and your team. Thanks for your time, and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Interesting thing about Steve Smith. A couple of weeks ago, I'm watching this story of Christine Jessup on Netflix, 1984 disappearance, subsequent murder. Steve Smith is involved in the solving of that crime through the same technology.
Same technology, right? They built the family tree, and it was that case was 42 years ago.
Crazy,
right? And it was such a high profile case.
Yeah,
and as he mentioned as well in our interview, there's so many people that are getting caught finally, but it's also lifting the suspicion off people that they were wrongly suspected of doing.
Absolutely.
Right? Always, whether it's a family member or an ex-boyfriend or something like, that cloud of suspicion never goes away. No. You finally get that freedom, really, is what it is. And I think when you think of cold cases, 15, 20 years ago, the percentage of cold cases being solved was near zero. They just weren't being solved, right? So this has kind of opened the door to what we're seeing now, which is almost a rush of cases being solved. So if you're a cold case investigator anywhere in the world right now, you're actually feeling like you can put some of these cases to rest, which is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, good stuff. Speaking of DNA, looks like you left some on a floor somewhere over the weekend. Freshly trimmed?
Yes, it took me 4 hours.
Big machete.
That's right.
Very nice. Looking good. All right. Tonight's show produced, as always, by Derek Turner. Closer look at villagemedia.ca, by the way, if you'd like to reach out anytime. We're happy to get an email from you. For Michael Friscolati, our editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow night at 7 right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.